Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Raphael Warnock finally beat Herschel Walker, though not by very much. And the fact that he didn't beat Walker handily in November is bad enough as is, but he barely managed to do it at all this week either. And there's absolutely no reason for not being able to stomp Herschel Walker through the ground first try. This guy never should have even been in contention. You have easily the most beatable, least electable clodhopper to ever be put on a ballot in living memory, and yet Raphael Warnock is having a hard time finally closing the deal on this one. A man who runs around saying he's a cop when he's not. A man who admits that he's got mental issues. A man who's admitted that he's got multiple children by multiple women and multiple abortions by multiple women. And yet you got the clean-cut Raphael Warnock, a preacher no less. And he couldn't just win this one walking away. Tells you a lot about Raphael Warnock, and it tells you even more about the political party backing him. Now, the white media is willing to admit that it was Atlanta specifically and the area surrounding it that put Raphael Warnock over the top. Then again, that's nothing that we didn't already know. Black people are the ones who deliver the victory for Warnock, but the white media is being very careful not to say that. Instead, they're just saying Atlanta and the surrounding area. Yeah, it's time for us to pivot away from saying black so much. Black folks start making these demands, and what's happening is it's getting traction, so we got to make sure that we don't say that. And let's not be naive here. A lot of black folks were voting for Raphael Warnock, but my question is, voting for him for what? What did this man promise to do? What virtues does he have? What's the point of voting for him? Now, the white media already went ahead and ran with the preacher man narrative. Raphael Warnock is pastor at the exact same church that Dr. King was pastor of back in the day, but so what? Nobody's asking Warnock to deliver a sermon. He's being told to deliver black people our tangibles, which of course he did not say one solitary word about in all of his bloviating and public speaking. Instead, it was the same, we need to be nice to folks and we're going to be compassionate. Yeah, except for black folks, and we're not going to be nice to black folks and not compassionate toward black folks, and society needs to get better, but it doesn't matter if black people's condition doesn't improve at all. But of course, Raphael Warnock's not the only blowhard who won political office without having to promise black people anything. Recently, Karen Bass won her campaign to be the mayor of Los Angeles. But why should we be happy about that? She didn't make any promises to black Los Angelinos, didn't even acknowledge black Los Angelinos' issues or concerns or interests. As we saw with the 3 racist Latino LA council people, they chose a black woman, Heather Hutt, to be their token Negro to fill a vacancy on the city council. And what were the stellar qualifications that made Heather Hutt so deserving of their endorsement? As former Councilman Gil Cedillo said, she'll support us. He and his pals said that she would be a vote for them, for that cabal of racist Latino council members. Heather Hutt's a tool, and clearly they looked at her as an ironclad bootlicking puppet. Nuri Martinez squealed, ooh, when Heather Hutt's name was mentioned. The little racist skank was getting pre-orgasmic over it. So now we have Karen Bass as mayor of Los Angeles. And who is Karen Bass's husband? She was married to a Latino man way back when. They split and he wound up dying some years later. But that hasn't stopped Karen Bass from pointing out that she had a child by him and is very close with her now deceased husband's other children. Essentially, Karen Bass has been marketing herself as being a Latina-in-law. A month before the election, the Los Angeles Times wrote a puff piece about Karen Bass. But it became obvious that the actual point of the piece was to certify that the Hispanic community doesn't harbor any anti-black racism. Because look at this ethnically ambiguous black woman who got voted mayor of LA, and she's done everything she could to promote the fact that she raised a Latino man's children. Everyone hold hands, kumbaya, we are the world. Los Angeles is now one big United Colors of Benetton ad. And then at the very end of this bilge, the writer says the Latino politicians on the tape portrayed an us versus them attitude toward black people, white people, other Latinos, and just about everyone else. Bass and her stepchildren demonstrate just how wrong they were. But that's not true at all. The writer who put this together, he sounds exactly like every white right-winger pathetically trying to deny that the GOP or the conservative movement is the neo-Nazi movement in America. And it also sounds like every white liberal who pushes the same narrative, only they claim that there's racism, but our love and tolerance will overcome it. All the while, they do nothing to stop the anti-black violence. We've all heard about how in California, the largest racial discrimination case in the state's history is black people pointing out how Latino co-workers and supervisors are engaging in blatant, open anti-black racism. This is the largest racial discrimination case in the state's history. But this Arellano character doesn't even mention it, because facts don't fit his narrative. And his narrative is that there is no anti-black racism for the Latino community in California or anywhere else. Why, look at Karen Bass. Of course, Karen Bass is an absolutely lousy example to point to for this one, because her stepchildren are not her co-workers, and they're not her supervisors either. However, Kevin DeLeon, who is still on the LA City Council and who is refusing to resign, he's going to be one of Karen Bass's co-workers. Whether people like this Arellano character want to admit it or not, and clearly he prefers not to, Nury Martinez and her racist pals give an accurate and honest portrayal of the racial attitude towards black Los Angelinos. And it's not just in LA. Look at how Mexico has denied its own racism, all the while being infested and rotten to the core with anti-black racism. This Arellano character was simply attempting to hold up Bass's stepchildren and use them to claim that there is no anti-black racism at all from the Latino community. That's all this piece was about. The story, and it was a work of fiction indeed, was all about her kids. It wasn't really about Karen Bass at all. This is self-absolution. It doesn't work for the police and it won't work for anyone else. So Karen Bass had done what low-down Willie Brown did in San Francisco, effectively separate herself from the black community so that what happens to the collective doesn't have any bearing on her. As Karen Bass sees it, she's escaped blackness, or at least she's escaped whatever condition the black masses have to endure. So her constituency is a non-black one. That's the point of her entire campaign. And like every white liberal, she will make a few insincere noises about how she feels black people are being treated, but she's not going to lift a finger to do anything. Why should she? She's not part of the black community, and whatever happens to the black community won't have anything to do with her, or so she thinks. And so people like this Arellano character can claim that the whole issue of the Latino community's anti-black racism is now a moot point because, after all, Karen Bass got elected mayor of LA, and obviously there's more Hispanics there than black people, so this proves that there's nothing to it. Why? Nury Martinez and her pals, they were wrong. They were only speaking for themselves, well, if you don't count all of the numerous examples that prove what they said. The Latino author of this article is using the same rhetorical trick that both the white left and the white right use. Both the Republicans and Democrats alike hold up some hand-picked token Negro and claim that this one individual who they got on their payroll somehow nullifies and cancels out the obvious mass anti-black racism that the majority of black people deal with every single day. You can't say that America's racist towards black people. Why, look at Barack Obama. Why, look at these NBA players over here. That's the right-wing talking point. And the left-wing version is, well, things aren't perfect, but we're moving in the right direction and we're going to hold hands and we're making progress and blah, blah, blah. Two sides of the same coin. But we understand, though, it's not just the white powers that be that can use this propaganda. You got some of these other people of color who also use it as well. When you're aligned with white supremacy, that tends to happen. So propaganda like this isn't fooling anyone. And the white media's actually got the nerve to call her election historic. I don't see how Karen Bass is not the first black person to be mayor of LA. Tom Bradley was. And he was just as duplicitous and hostile towards black people as every other mayor at LA before him. Remember, the Rodney King beating and the LA riots all happened on Mayor Bradley's watch. And Karen Bass hasn't said a word about black Los Angelinos, nothing at all. The Republican who Karen Bass was running against didn't say a word about black people, and Karen Bass didn't say a word about black people either. That's not a choice, family. This is continuity of government. This is a consistent policy that both political parties are carrying out. There was no political earthquake, because nothing changed. It was just the same old California political machine games being played. It's Karen Bass's turn, just like it was Kamala Harris's turn. It's all a political game of musical chairs, but the idea is to make sure that black people are always left without a chair when the music stops. The goal of the white media is trying to get us to invest in these hand-picked puppets who don't want our support and who are desperately trying to get to the point where they don't even need it. These Negro puppets see black people as only useful to the extent that they can go to white power and claim that this is their following. They want to use the black community as nothing more than a springboard to propel themselves to a position of privilege and prosperity. But they have absolutely no interest in us whatsoever. It's no different than a TV network who goes to advertisers. Networks don't care about the viewers. What they care about is going to some big corporation and showing them, look at how many people watch our network. And then they monetize that audience in the form of advertiser revenue. The audience is a means to an end, not an end unto itself. And the same thing goes for black voters. That's how Raphael Warnock sees them. That's how Karen Bass sees them. What's important, though, is how black people see themselves. So all the folks who are getting happy about Raphael Warnock, and I'm not naive enough to think a few of them aren't here, I see their comments. You guys go ahead and do that. You did the same thing with Jim Crow Joe Biden when he got elected. You keep rewarding these individuals for doing nothing for black folks. So Warnock has won his Senate seat in his own right, and best of all, he didn't have to promise black people anything to get it. But the white media will try to whitewash his benign neglect by reminding us that he's a preacher, he's a man of God, he's the pastor of Dr. King's church, just in case you forgot about that part. Well, if they think that this one Bible-thumping puppet is going to suddenly make us forget about our interests, both Warnock and the white media don't have a prayer. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Richard Lovell, Big Stomp, Quincy X, Jesse Garrett, and Elaine Zanga Zanga. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.